What up, everybody? Hope you're having a good Friday. You're watching New York Giants Now by Chat Sports. I'm your host, Marshall Green. We have a huge show on tap today because there are reports coming out from the New York Post that the Giants are not done making moves. It sounds like the Giants are interested in making another trade, using some of those late day 3 picks that they have. They have a lot of them, and trading them for a veteran. Ryan Dunleavy, who works for the Post, broke the news. But I kind of want to set up to show you how really on point Ryan Dunleavy has been this offseason. The first person to report that Daniel Jones wanted $40 million was Ryan Dunleavy. When then those reports came out from other New York sports publications that they were not true, Ryan Dunleavy doubled down. The first person to break the news of the Daniel Jones contract extension, Ryan Dunleavy. And then he tweets out today and says, don't be surprised if the Giants trade another of their picks for a veteran player between now and the end of draft. What also did Ryan Dunleavy break earlier this offseason? It was the Darren Waller trade. Some guy responded to Dunleavy's tweet and said, you gave this kind of hint before the Waller trade. Who? Question mark. And Dunleavy responded and said, I did. Transparency, I knew it was Waller then, but couldn't get a second source to confirm it before it was official. I don't have any names now that the Giants could trade for, but he said free agency is dried up, and thought from other teams is that the New York Giants are still looking to add veterans at cornerback, defensive line, and are willing to spare some extra draft picks. So I do think there's some smoke right here. I would not be shocked if they did make a trade. What could they trade? They have a bunch of day 3 draft picks, 2 picks in the 5th round, a pick in the 6th round, and 3 picks in the 7th round. So if the Giants want to trade 1, 2, or maybe 3 of their day 3 draft picks for a veteran, they absolutely have the ammunition to do so. Dunleavy talked about a corner or a defensive tackle, and those are the people that we're going to break down on today's show. I'm going to give you 3 DTs or 2 DTs and a defensive lineman that I think the Giants could trade for. And then I'll give you 3 cornerbacks that I think have some trade rumors surrounding these guys. I talked to all the different hosts here at Chat Sports, and I asked them if there's a guy on your team who would be the one that would be traded. And I did some research, and I found out some guys actually have some trade rumors surrounding them. But before we talk about the 6 players that could be on the move to New York, I want you to pick a position to trade for. Because I don't think the Giants would make a trade for a corner and a defensive tackle. I think there would just be one trade. So if you had to pick a position for them to trade for, which one would it be? Cornerback or DT? You see it right here. Let me know in the comment section. So we're going to run through 3 defensive tackles, 2 DTs, and an edge rusher, because I think the Giants could still use an edge rusher, and there's some good ties to this one guy I'm going to talk about. And then 3 cornerbacks that I think the New York Giants could trade for. First, though, let's lock in on the defensive line depth chart for Big Blue, because I think that they need an addition, and I think you can see why on screen. You got Leonard Williams, you got Dexter Lawrence, you got Azeez Ojulari, you got Kayvon Thibodeau. You re-signed Jihad Ward, you brought in Nacho, Raheem Nunez-Roches, but outside of that, you have a whole bunch of players on this roster that really haven't proved anything in the NFL, like Ryder Anderson, Ellerson Smith, and Tom and Fox, who most of those guys were at UDFA. So I think the Giants want another defensive tackle that could play in a rotation with Williams and Lawrence, because I think those guys played way too many snaps last year. The first guy that I think came to mind for me, and then talking to some people that could be traded that plays the defensive line, is Ed Oliver. Obviously the connection there between Joe Shane and Brian Dable dating back to the days in Buffalo, but he wants a new contract, and it doesn't sound like the Buffalo Bills are willing to cash out Ed Oliver. Was a really high pick in the draft a couple of years ago. I wouldn't say he's been a bust, but maybe a little bit of a disappointment. Hasn't lived up to the hype that he got coming out of Houston. A lot of people compared him to Aaron Donald, but that was just unfair at the time. But he is no doubt a good football player. At the size and speed he is really a unicorn in the NFL. Played in 13 games last year, had 34 tackles, 9 tackles for loss, 2.5 sacks, and 31 QB pressures. And that's been a steady diet throughout his career. I mean, you look at the stats on screen. His rookie year, he had 7 tackles for loss and 5 sacks, then 9 tackles for loss and 3 sacks. Not a guy that's going to give you a whole bunch of sacks, but a good football player that would be an excellent rotational piece on this Giants defensive line. What if they want a guy that's actually a true veteran, like Dunleavy talked about, that I think could play anywhere on this defensive line, and someone that has ties to Wink Martindale? Let's talk about Za'Darius Smith, the veteran edge rusher from the Minnesota Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings are in desperate need of draft compensation. They need more draft capital. They haven't really got better this offseason. Had a good season last year. Just some team that wears blue jerseys in New York sent them home, even though they had a home playoff game. Smith last year was good, 10 sacks, but he's 30 years old, and maybe you could get him for a 4th or a 5th round pick. Like we talked about, he played with Wink Martindale when he was a part of the Baltimore Ravens. There's obviously a relationship there, in him being your backup edge rusher, but behind Ojulari and Kayvon Thibodeau, not only makes your team better, but it makes those two guys better, because Smith is one of this best generation's pass rushers, and he could teach them the tricks of the trade, be kind of a big bro mentor for those guys. Before we talk about the third player, I want to ask you, if you could only trade for one of these guys, who would it be? Would it be Ed Oliver of the Buffalo Bills, or Za'Darius Smith of the Minnesota Vikings? I think Oliver will be a little bit more expensive. Think you might have to give up a 3rd or maybe a 4th round pick for him. I think for Za'Darius Smith, might only cost you a 5th, probably a 6th round pick. So factor that into your answer. Type EO for Ed Oliver or ZS for Za'Darius Smith. If the Giants want to take a guy, trade for a guy that was also a former 1st round pick, but has somewhat been a bust, but the talent is there. What about Javon Kinlaw of the San Francisco 49ers? His career has not gone like a lot of people thought. A lot of people thought he was a can't-miss prospect. He was selected in the 1st round, all the tools, all the raw talent, but it has not just worked out. Maybe the Giants want to buy low on a player that they think still could give you some juice down the line. That is Kinlaw. Just 12 tackles in the last 2 years. But you look at what he did in his rookie season, he was solid. 33 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks, and 4 QB hits. I like him. I don't love him. He's somebody that I would definitely consider when making a trade. These are the best 3 guys I could come up with, but knowing Joe Shane, it might even be somebody else. We'll get to 3 cornerbacks in a second that I think could be on the trade market that the Giants could talk about. But first, I got to tell you guys about our proud sponsor of today's show, and that is Z-Biotics. A little bit of transparency here. Sometimes when we go on live shows and we have those super chat paloozas, things get out of hand, and the next morning for me is really rough. But thanks to Z-Biotics, that's not the case anymore. Z-Biotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough next day. Z-Biotics produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. It's designed to work like your liver, but in your gut, where you need it most. Drink Z-Biotics before drinking alcohol, drink responsibly, and get a good night's sleep to feel your best tomorrow. Give Z-Biotics a try for yourself. Go to zbiotics.com/chatsports to get 15% off your first order when you use code ChatSports at checkout. Z-Biotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reasons, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Go to zbiotics.com/chatsports and use code ChatSports for 15% off. The link right here, zbiotics.com/chatsports, is clickable in the comments and description of today's video. Before we talk about the 3 corners that I think could be on the move or on the trade market that Joe Shane might inquire about, let's talk about the guys we already have on the roster playing this position. Adoree Jackson, he is your cornerback 1. Going to be a free agent after this upcoming season. Giants will have to make a decision on him. Darnay Holmes has been a solid player so far in his NFL career, but he's a little bit grabby at that slot position, and he is also on the last year of his rookie deal. Aaron Robinson missed a lot of time, pretty much the whole season last year. Had a good rookie year, but I'm looking for him to take a step in year 3 and maybe solidify that cornerback 2 spot. Cordell Flott, the rookie at LSU entering his 2nd season, I think he's going to make a big step. But the Giants could use another proven corner on this roster. And the guy that's being talked about the most on the NFL trade block that plays corner is Kenny Moore II from the Indianapolis Colts. He can play inside, he can play outside, but he's definitely more of a slot corner at this height of just 5'9". Didn't play too well this year for the Colts, but this was really the first down year of his career. When you look at 2021 and 2020, he was really good. 25 pass breakups in those 2 seasons, played in every single game, 8 interceptions, and 182 tackles. He's not afraid to get downhill and mix it up in the run game. I think he's a better player than Darnay Holmes, and I think he's someone the Giants could absolutely look at. He's someone that I thought didn't fit the new scheme that the Indianapolis Colts ran this year, but I think in a Wink Martindale scheme where he's allowed to get a little bit more physical, use his hands, and play a little bit more press coverage and lock down in the slot, I think he'd fit really well into this Big Blue defense. Probably the best corner that we're going to talk about today is Greg Newsome II from the Cleveland Browns. There was a whole bunch of commotion surrounding Greg Newsome as a couple of days ago, a Cleveland Browns beat reporter tweeted out that Greg Newsome wanted a new trade after he hired a new agent. Then Adam Schefter got in on it and said it wasn't true. And then Greg Newsome replied to the tweet that said he wanted a trade, and he said, yo, that's not true. Then the reporter apologized and walked it back. But where there is smoke, there is fire. And maybe the Giants could send a appealing enough pick to Cleveland to make a move and get Newsome. He played in the slot this past year for Cleveland, but he wants to be an outside corner, and that's kind of where the friction started. And I think he's got all the tools and intangibles to be an outside corner, but I like the flexibility and really just the fact that he could play multiple positions. I like Newsome, but he would be the most expensive corner to trade for. He's just entering his 3rd season in the National Football League, so I think you'd probably have to give up a 3rd-round pick and maybe get back a 5th, but that might be too rich for the blood of the New York Giants. I do know this, though. If the Giants make another move, we're going to break it down on this channel. When the Giants make a move, we make a video, and we're probably going to go live on the channel if it's a big-time trade. So hit that sub button or go to youtube.com/NYGiantsTV. We just crossed over 27,000 subs, so I want to say thank you to everybody that's joined the team. 28,000, we're coming for you next. If the Giants want to take a flyer on a guy that was once a 1st-round pick, but due to injuries has not been able to stay on the football field, what about Caleb Farley out of Tennessee? Only played in 12 games throughout the first 2 years of his NFL career, but people were extremely high on him coming out of college. This was someone that a lot of people thought could be the best corner in this draft class because he has that height. He's got that speed. He's got that athleticism, but the injury bug is something that he just hasn't been able to shake throughout his NFL career. In 12 games, just 14 tackles, 1 pass breakup. He's been targeted 22 times and allowed just 16 receptions, which honestly is not good numbers whatsoever. He hasn't put out a good product while being in the NFL, but the upside is still something that I think he could tap into and maybe something that this awesome coaching staff for New York thinks that they could, lock into and make him a good player. A lot of the player that a lot of people thought he could be coming out of the NFL draft. So we've shown you 3 corners so far that maybe the Giants could trade for. Is there one that you're really interested in and you think the Giants should trade for? Type KM for Kenny Moore, GN for Greg Newsome, or CF for Caleb Farley. If I had to choose, I'd go with Kenny Moore because I think Newsome would be the most expensive. I think Farley is the biggest risk, but I think Moore fits this system and fits a position of need. He's 27 years old. I think he'd be the cheapest, and I think it would be the best bang for your buck, but I want to hear from you. Let me know down in the comment section. The Giants, I think, are not done making moves. And I think with Dunleavy tweeting this out, that there's some good smoke to this. He was right about Jones. He was right about Waller. And he might have a really good source inside the building in New Jersey. So I just wanted to get you guys this video today and talk about it. Not sure who the players are. This was my best guess, but you know what? Probably going to be somebody else. Appreciate everybody for tuning in to today's video. If you made it this far in the show, hit that thumbs up icon, like the video. It helps the channel a lot. Give me a follow on Twitter @MarshallGreen_.